everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Samantha Anderson. I am a freelance artist and teacher hoping to inspire creativity. If you would like more videos like these, please take a second to like and subscribe down below. It really helps in the algorithm of YouTube to help get my videos seen to more people. If you want to receive notifications of when I go live, please make sure to hit the bell and choose all notifications. If you have any questions during or after the class, make sure to pop a comment down below and I will answer it as soon as I can. I'll be leaving timestamps down below so you can skip ahead to the start of class, but I will be sharing announcements as well as supplies, so make sure to stick around for that. If interested in learning more about my classes, please follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and feel free to check me out on Patreon, where I teach exclusive classes to those who support me. In Patreon, I also give traceables for all of my live classes, including this one. Lastly, if you would like to share your work after class with me and others who painted along with us, please head over to Facebook, as I have an artist community where you can share your finished painting with us. I'll leave links for all of that in the description box below. Thanks for joining me, and let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back to another live stream. Welcome back to another live class. Today we are painting this beautiful landscape called Golden Sunset. I'm super excited for it. It's a little bit of a sunset silhouette, but it does have a little bit more color in it than a sunset silhouette would have, because it's got like the greenery at the bottom. So I'm really excited for this. I see a lot of you have already commented below. Let me know if you're here painting with me. I always love to see where people are painting, if you're painting with someone, or yeah, all that jazz. If you have any questions for me specifically, please let me know by commenting down below. And if you're live, make sure that you at me, so at Samantha Anderson, and it'll pop up orange for me, and that will let me know that you guys have a question and it needs to draw my attention, because sometimes if there's a lot of comments, I don't always get to read them all. So yeah, thanks so much for joining me. I'm excited for this one. Let's go over supplies and things you're going to need for this class. All of the supplies that I use specifically are going to be in the description box below. I also have an Amazon list. If you buy from Amazon, I get a lot of the things that I use off of Amazon. Super helpful. I have everything listed not only in the description but also on my Amazon shop. So if you're interested in that, if you're watching this at a later date or whatever the case and you want to prepare for that, I have that listed down below. The first thing I'm going to go over is my traceable. This is for a 9x12. I also have an 11x14. You do not need a traceable for any of my classes. It's simply there as a way to support me, as well as also a way to, if you don't like sketching things on and you have troubles with proportions or anything like that, feel free to use it. It's not cheating. Drawing is just a different skill set that you may or may not have, or you're just tired and you don't want to spend 3 hours, sketching something out. So if you're interested in the traceable, I have them in 2 different sizes currently, and if you're a patron, obviously, like, if you want a different size, please let me know. Just post on that traceable, and I can resize it. That's no problem. I typically don't use traceables for nature type of things, because I like to be a little bit more free. But for instance, we just started a frog in my Patreon, and I was like, I could spend 3 hours getting all the proportions correctly, or I could use a traceable and get to painting, because that's what I want to do, right? So it's all up to you. Okay, so that's the traceable. And my Patreon, I have a couple different tiers. I'll talk about it later as well. But there's a traceable tier. There's a tutorials tier. I have specific tutorials that I only release for patrons. So if you like these sort of tutorials, I have 2 different levels for tutorials. I have a $10 level and a $20 level. $20 level, we paint weekly and we go more in depth in our classes. So feel free to check that out. There's links for my Patreon everywhere. You can also just go patreon.com/SamanthaAndersonArtist and it will come up. Okay, supplies. We are using, I typically always will use a 11x14. I feel like it's a nice size. You can hang up on your wall, but it's not too small, but it's not too big that you have to like move everything to put it on the wall. So that is the size that I'm using. Feel free to use whatever size you want. It doesn't really matter what size you use, just whatever you're comfortable with. Note if you are using something that's a lot bigger than what I'm using, it might take a little bit longer, so you might have to either pause the video or catch up at a later time, okay? Colors, we have an array of colors. You do not have to use the exact colors that I am using. So let's say I'm using raw umber. If you have a burnt umber or something that's close to that, that's totally fine too. It does not have to be exactly the same as me. So let's go over colors real fast. I have, of course, my black and my white. I have my raw umber, which is just a dark brown. So if you have a dark brown that's, not specifically raw umber, that's fine too. I have a couple different yellows because I haven't really decided what yellows I'm going to use. I have yellow ochre, medium yellow, and a bright lemon yellow. It's kind of hard to see the difference on this camera. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So these are the different colors of yellow that I have. The bright yellow here right in the middle is like, I feel like it's this neon bright yellow. But the background mountains might be the yellow ochre, or maybe like a mix of the two darker ones. So I like having different colors on hand. If you don't have these on hand, that is totally fine. Yellow ochre is essentially just your yellow mixed with like a tiny bit of brown, and this lemon yellow would probably just... Neon colors are interesting because you really can't make them with your primary colors. I would say just add white to it and you'll probably be fine. Any yellow going straight on a white canvas is going to be bright. It's when you start adding more and more and more that it starts to darken a little bit. But yeah, so that's what I have in terms of yellow. I do have an orange that I might use here. And then if you have a red, you can get that one out. It was kind of like red or orange, whichever you prefer, whatever you have on hand, just to tint the like the backgrounds a little bit, in case you didn't have like a yellow ochre or something like that. And then for the clouds, we are going to be using, I'm not sure what blue I said on there. I have a phthalo blue. I felt like the colors up above are just a tiny bit more like phthalo blue, rather like a warmer blue than a cooler blue. So I have phthalo blue. And then I also have a purple. I know I did not put this on the list. This is a purple. You could either use purple or you could just use your red and your blue. So that's kind of why red was on there as well, because it's kind of just depending on what colors you have. And I'm all about using what colors you have on hand. You don't need to go out and buy specific colors that I'm using. Like, use what you have, figure it out. And if you have questions of like, oh, I don't have this color, what can I use instead? Let me know in the chat, and I'll give you some hints on what you could use instead. So me specifically, I have phthalo blue and purple. That purple is going to be really nice to blend the blue into the yellow, because if we don't have that purple in between that, then you're going to have a green sky rather than that purple, because that purple into yellow makes a brown, and it's a little bit of an easier transition than going from blue to yellow. I hope that makes sense. And then I do have a couple greens. So I have a bright green and kind of like a bluish green. But again, whatever greens you have, I'm sure is going to be fine. The brown is also nice to be able to hint a little bit of the green to more of like a brown, like a toned down green, and it's not so bright. But the green in this picture is fairly bright, probably because the saturation of whoever took the picture kind of made it brighter. But I love this photo. I love how bright it is. Okay, so those are the colors. There's a lot of colors, but again, you could get by with your primary colors, your blue, your yellow, and your red. Like, you can make green with your blue and your yellow, and you can make purple with your blue and your red. So you don't have to have all these colors. This is just kind of what I have. And if you're wondering what brand I have Hippie Crafter. These are not craft acrylics, the ones that you usually see in the bottles. Let me just point that out. These are professional full body acrylics. They're like the normal ones that come in the tube, but they provided me like a box of them like last year and then again over Christmas, which is super nice. They're really lovely to work with. But these are not craft acrylics. They're full body acrylics, just in case anyone has questions about that later. I have a palette knife that I like to use for mixing. So I have a flat palette that I like to use, and that's really great for mixing colors. And then for the background, I'm going to be using this is kind of my go-to brushes for like all classes. I have a filbert, a large filbert that I usually use for the backgrounds. But if you have a flat brush, that's fine too. You don't need to, go out and get yourself another brush. I have a smaller filbert, and this is actually really good for trees and things like that. And then I have a smaller round brush and then a liner brush. I don't know how much lining we will be doing. We could add some liner brush detail work to the grass. So, but that's up to you. I always like adding whatever I see in a semi-realism painting. So I just or you could just add whatever you want. You can add flowers at the bottom, whatever you want. It's your painting. You get to decide. But so these are the brushes that I will typically use in all my classes. Specifically in this one, if you would like to use a fan brush, I use these. They're stiff hog bristle brushes. And this is definitely on my Amazon list. I highly recommend these. They're fairly cheap. I feel like there was only like $10 or $12 for a kit of, I think there's like 4 or 5 of them that came with it, just ranging in sizes, and they're great. I love them. So if you want to use that, you don't need to. I'm going to be showing how to do it with just a normal small-ish filbert. You can get a lot of fun tree-like branches with the filbert, so that's really fun. I think that's about it. Let me know if you have any questions, and we will get started. While you're all getting that out, let me go over just a few announcements, and then we will get started. So last week, if you didn't know, on the 5th Wednesday of every month, we do a watercolor class, and this is what we painted in our watercolor class. We painted some very pretty purple pansies, and if you were in with me with class, you'll know why there's bees on there, because originally there was not bees, but when I was demonstrating something, I had turned the page so that I could demonstrate on another page, and I had accidentally gotten like a yellow spot on here, and I was like, oh no, I can't pull it up because it's watercolor. Like, you can't just, and I could paint over, but then there'd be like a white spot, and somebody was like, do a bee. And I was like, you know what? That's a great idea. So I did a couple bees, and I love them. I'm so glad that we did it. And some other people even added bees to theirs. So thank you to all of my followers who were like, oh, do a bee, because I think it turned out great. So if you want to learn watercolor, I do have that one. And starting in May, because so many of you have requested it, I am going to be starting to do watercolor monthly. So it's not just going to be on our 5th Wednesday, it's going to be every month. So that is all thanks to you guys and your encouragement, as well as your just want to do more watercolor. I appreciate it. And I love doing watercolor, so I'm happy to get to do it more. So there's that. And then in my Patreon, I have 2 classes. One is going to be available on this Friday, so in 2 days. And I think I sneak peeked this either last week or the week before, I can't remember. But we're doing this lion, kind of colorful, majestic, abstract lion. And so if you like this sort of style, I also have an elephant that we did. As well as on my YouTube channel for free, I have a Women's Day International tribute. And so if you want to explore this kind of color style more, I do have a couple other classes. So if you become a patron at the $10 level, you'll have access to this class as well as my elephant class, and every other magenta tier Friday tutorial that I've done. So you have access to over 50 classes if you join this month, and you'll have the whole month, and you can stay for just 1 month or you can stay longer. But yeah, so that's that. And then lastly, this month we are doing a frog in my Cobalt class. So we do this weekly, and we started this guy yesterday. Look how cute he is. I can't look at his little smile. It's already showing up, and I'm just like, this is fantastic. I forgot how much I love frogs. I grew up with frogs, like little tiny ones, and I forgot how much I loved frogs until I started painting this. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so cute. So this is what we're doing. This is literally the very beginning stages. We painted in black, we did a wash, we put in a couple colors. That took about an hour to do. So in my Cobalt class, we paint weekly together, and it's live. You can join live if you want, or you don't have to. You can paint afterwards. All my classes that I do, whether on YouTube or Patreon, stay recorded and stay either on YouTube or Patreon for forever. So when you join in Patreon, you literally get access to everything else within that tier that I've ever posted. And I've had a Patreon for a little over 2 years, I think. So you have access to literally everything I've posted. So that's really fun. If you want to help, if you want to paint this with us, it's at the $20 level, and we go a little bit more in detail, a little bit more in depth with everything, and it's a lot of fun. All right, I believe that is the end of our announcements. With the exception, if you like these classes, please subscribe, like the video. It really does help in the algorithm of letting YouTube know that you like the content, and it shares it to more people. Okay, let's get started. All right, let's go ahead and get out our yellows. So the first thing we are doing is painting in our yellows, and we're kind of just going to get a background. So I'm going to do yellows and then purples and blue, and we're going to pre-mix these colors so that we can get a really, really good gradient, and that's going to be the background color, and then we can add clouds and details on top of that. But having that base of that color is going to be really helpful in figuring out kind of where everything goes, okay? So let's go ahead. I'm going to get out my 3 different colors. Again, if you only have the one color yellow, that's totally fine. We can work with it. I would say if you only have one color, I would do kind of like a mix of white and yellow as your light color, your normal yellow, and then add a tiny bit of brown to the third color yellow to make it a little bit more of a yellow ochre, if that makes sense. So we have that. I'm going to create a slight purpley color. So I'm going to get out my brown. I'm also going to get out my purple. Again, if you don't have purple, then go ahead and mix some blue and red together. And I know that looks like black. It's not black. It's just it's called violet. It's very, very dark. And then I'm going to get out my blue. We're going to have fun with some mixing colors right now. All right, so these colors I don't necessarily need to touch, my yellows. Obviously, if you don't have those 3 yellows and you want to mix some lighter colors and darker colors within your yellows, feel free to do that now. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the kind of like the in-between brownish color. So I'm going to take some of this yellow ochre, and I'm going to add a little bit of brown. Now be careful with adding darker colors to your yellow because they will take over your color. Because yellow is just not, it doesn't have a lot of color in it. I don't know the actual viscosity. I don't remember the word for it. So I added a little bit of brown to it. And I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of purple. We're gonna try to just bridge the gap between these colors. I'm gonna add a little bit more purple to it. Okay, that's good. Then I'm going to go ahead and get out some white so that I can add this to the color. I'm gonna add a little bit of white to this brownish color, purpley brown. What's funny is even though I added purple to it, it really doesn't look that purple. And that is because yellow plus purple, yellow and purple are opposites of opposite colors. They're complementary colors, which means they're opposite on the color wheel. So if you have a color wheel, if you can picture it, you have your yellow, your blue, and your red. In between your red and blue is your purple, which is the complete opposite of your yellow. That's why they're complementary colors. Your green and your red, your blue and your orange, and of course your purple and your yellow. So any opposite color, each complementary color to itself is going to make brown, because the primary colors make brown itself. So obviously, you know, purple is your two complementary colors, so that makes brown. So as we're adding purple to our yellow, it's just creating a little bit more brown. So let's go ahead and make our kind of purpley bit. I'm gonna grab some purple, a tiny bit of brown, and a little bit of white. Let's just kind of see where it takes us. All right, this is pretty good. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of blue and a little bit more brown. And because that blue and brown darkened it, I'm gonna lighten it up with a little bit of white. Okay, that's pretty good. So then from there, we can go into our blue. So I'm gonna create a soft blue that we're going to go into. I'm gonna put in a little bit of that purple just to create the same type of color. And I'm gonna add white to it to lighten it up. And we need a lot more white. So I'm gonna put that aside. We have a few different options of blue. If you ever have too much paint that you're working with, just split it in half. And then you'll have two different versions of the same color, which is nice. Then I'm also going to create maybe like a brownish blue. Maybe with just like a little bit more brown in it. So I did blue, brown, a tiny bit of purple and white. Okay, so I have a couple different like colors to all work with. I'm gonna move this over so you can see a little bit more of my palette. Okay, so I have a bunch of different colors. I have kind of like this yellowy brown. I have a grayish purple, and it doesn't have to be the exact color, just somewhere close to it. I have it's kind of a brighter blue and then like a whitish blue. And then this one is a little bit, it's got a tiny bit more of that purpley in it. Okay. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take that, we're going to take the yellow and we're going to put it in this middle area. Somebody just asked a question. Give me a second. How are you keeping your paints wet when you mix so many before started? Mine dry quickly. Mine tend not to dry up that fast. Maybe it's the moisture that's in the air. I'm not sure. If you're in warmer areas, obviously you'll need to keep them wet. I would get like a mister and just mist your palette as you go. Obviously try not to add too much water because it's going to create, the more water you add, the more it's going to get translucent. But none of these have dried yet. And now we're going to start using them. So I'm going to grab my filbert. I'm going to get it wet and I'm going to focus on just this area. So the tree is pretty much right in the middle, and you can put your sun right behind it, or you can put it off to the side, up to you. I'm going to grab some white. We're going to do a little bit of white first. And if this is the tree, it's pretty much right in the center. So I'm just going to put this white right in the middle. And then I'm going to grab this yellow. I grabbed my lightest yellow. And I'm going to slowly start working my way into my darker colors. And right now I am going kind of in a circular motion. I'm just kind of blending that in, mostly right where it touches it. And then as I keep going out, I'm just going to grab my paint. Don't be shy with the amount of paint that you're putting on because you can always move it around once you get it on there. I'm just kind of moving around. If there's any part that you need to blend more, feel free to do that. And then as you move out and start adding that more and more paint, and I'm just focusing on this sky strip right here. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of that yellow ochre. And then after you get all of that paint on there, you can blend it by just going straight down, or I'm kind of going in a little bit of a like a curve. And you can just blend that all the way out in big long strokes. I'm gonna go over here to the other side. And if you want to blend, like let's say you have this and you want to blend that, you can do crisscross motions. until it's blended a little bit, and then do long strokes going all the way across that section. I want to get a little bit more of my yellow ochre. Oops, that's not yellow ochre. All right, so that's kind of that strip. And then now what we're gonna do is we're going to take, go ahead and rinse out your brush. I'm gonna take a medium to large round brush, and this one is the one that I use for clouds. You can kind of see that it's a little bit frayed right here, and that's because I often will do circles with it. So you want to get a brush that you don't necessarily want it to stay round, that you can do a little bit more with. I'm going to take some of this yellow ochre, and I'm going to start with a large brush first. You're going to start taking this and start putting it at the top. And this is going to be the bottom of the those clouds. I'm going to get some of this purple. I went up a little bit too far with the yellow. You can kind of see that. And I'm mostly, at this point, I'm mostly just covering up the initial line that I created with like the top of the yellow. I'm mainly just going over that right now. In this area specifically, I am going to go back into my yellow and a little bit of white, because there is a little bit of like a lighter area right here, but that's, you don't have to do that. But here's the part. We're gonna come back and kind of add that line in just a second. I'm gonna rinse out my brush, and what I want to do is go into this purple. Can grab a little bit of water, and there's like this purple strip that goes all the way across here. I'm just going to try to blend it in to that yellow as much as I can. This is just the first stage. So this is not what it's going to look like. And I'm just going back and forth, kind of crisscrossing this. And your blending doesn't have to be perfect on this because this is going to have that cloudy effect on it. And then you're just going to blend that purple and blue in each other. Again, I'm just going back and forth, and I'm trying not to go down too far because I only want to blend the purple and the blue. I don't want to go down as far as the yellow. That's really, really important. Because if you go too far, you're going to start getting green. We don't want green. We want blue, purpley brown, and then yellow. I'm going to come back to that kind of grayish blue here and blend it into that purple. Okay, I'm going to go back into this blue. There's some lighter blue up here, so I can just go straight into that. Alright, now I specifically missed doing the side of here, so I'm just going to go kind of backwards into my brown and then back into my yellow. So that it can kind of be the same. Alright, so this is close to, it's a really, really good start. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into this color that we have right here, which is kind of this brownish color. And we're going to create some clouds within this area with this brown. And the more you work in this area, the less you're gonna have on the less you're gonna have on your brush, and that way you can blend in certain things. And this is called dry brushing. So I'm using this brown. I know it seems a real awkward color, but in the context of this all, it's exactly the color that we want. You can add little pieces. And already it's starting to look like there's just lots of clouds. This is what it looks like up close. Doesn't really look like much, but when you look at it from a little bit further away, all of a sudden there's a good amount of clouds there. I'm not using a whole bunch of water in this. It really is like dry brushing. And we'll come back and put in those light sections eventually. So we're just looking at the dark. And then blending that into this like kind of like light area where this tree is going to be. If you feel like something is too dark, so when you go down lower, add a little bit of that yellow to it. And by no means do your clouds have to be exactly like the ones in the picture. If you want to add like cloud over here or whatever, like there's a little cloud over there, or there's some clouds down here a little bit lower, like you can do that. You can add them wherever you want. All right, so now we're just gonna move up a little bit. We're gonna do a kind of a brownish with a little bit more yellow in it. We'll see if this color works well. And we're gonna add the underside of some of these up here. You see that? Just adding those lines. And we're gonna slowly start adding a little bit of white and a tiny bit of purple to it. Just what's on my brush. And I'm not even blending anything in. I'm just putting a couple very light spots over here that I'm just adding some lines of light yellow to. Yellowish brown, I should say. And as I work my way up, I'm adding just a little bit more, like white to it. It's kind of like a white section right here. Alright, I'm going to go into this brighter blue and add a couple of these lighter spots up here. Just start to kind of add in this section, these blue, very blue spots. And then we can come behind it and add in some highlights on tops of these sections. All right. I'm going to take some of this purple and some white, maybe a little bit of brown to make it a little bit less purple, a little bit more of like a pinkish almost. And I'm going to add some of that over here on the right. If anything's ever looking a little bit out of ordinary, try to figure out what color you're trying to go into and then just add some of that color to the color that you're painting with, and that will help blend it, because everything goes from this dark color to a light color, and so whatever you need to add to that, just add that same color. Okay, so I think I'm ready to add some of these brighter highlights over here. So I'm going to start with the yellow in this area. And it's going to need so I'm going to do yellow and yellow ochre, and then a little bit of white. And the reason I put the yellow ochre in there is because that is what is in the background. And so it's if I just put the yellow on there, it's gonna look out of place and like not in, like it's not in the color wheel of what should be placed right there. I'm gonna add some white to this. So I'm going to use my lemon yellow and some white to add like the super duper highlights. Mostly over here, and I'm going to put more white in this area. So now I'm going to go in with white. Maybe I'm going to make this brighter. Just going to go in, circle it around. So I think that's pretty much it for the sky, which I really love how it's coming out. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in our mountains. So go ahead and rinse out all your brushes. Make sure they're all clean. I'm gonna grab my large filbert and just grab the kind of maybe brownish yellow ochre color. Maybe a little bit lighter than that. It almost has an orange hue to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab a little bit of orange. Just ever so slightly does it have an orange hue. And I'm gonna go ahead and just put this in. Just gonna blend that down because there's not a hard line that we're working with. And I'm gonna put it over here. It kind of fades out a little bit. And then we're gonna go a little bit darker with our brown. And I'm just going to blend it down into some yellow ochre so that the top is brighter, or is darker than the bottom. And so it's almost like there's like a misty effect. So again, I put that on and then I immediately go back over it with a yellow and blend it into the top. I think that one might even need to be higher. Maybe I'll go in to a higher one. Alright, so then this one has a little bit more purple in it. And we're just going to create these. And these mountains can really be wherever you want. They can be whatever shapes you want. I'm gonna come back over the bottom with a white and yellow mixture. It's got a little bit of brown in it. more white down here. So I'm going over the bottom while it's still wet. That's important. It's still wet, and I'm going over and just blending in some white. And I'm going to grab some purple and put that over here because I do feel like this side is darker. Don't forget to get the side. All right, so I'm going to rinse out my brush. And I'm going to grab some black for the first time. Weird, for the first time this whole class. And I'm actually, hold on one second. I'm going to add a little bit more white here because part of this is having that contrast. I'm just going to add a little bit more white just to lighten it up ever so slightly. I think that's good. All right, now we're gonna go into our black. And I'm gonna clean this up just ever so slightly, just so I have a little bit more room. A painting like this requires a lot of like in-between colors to help everything blend and coincide with each other. So I tend to use up a lot of space on my palette, but thankfully having this sort of a palette and this little handy knife pusher thingy, scraper, it's very, very helpful. Okay, so now I'm going to take my large brush and I'm going to grab my black after I take it out of my bottle. And I'm going to fill in this whole bottom area. So I'm going to start with the bottom, the actual bottom. And then you're going to create just the area that you want your greenery to be. Now theoretically I probably should have put my my mountains just a tad bit higher so that I have a little bit more space down below, but that's okay. And the top of this does not have to be a solid, like a solid straight line. I'd actually prefer that it's not, because there's going to be so much like grass and foliage. I would say I would recommend even like not having it a solid line. Alright, so my black ended up mixing a tiny bit with some of the white, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be perfect. We are going to be adding like green and like, you know, so if we need to do another coat of black, that's pretty typical anyways, so I'm not too worried about. I'm going to go ahead and rinse out my black brush. Okay. So now here's the fun part. Here's the fun part where we get to make our tree. Now, if you're afraid of straight lines, get a ruler. You can get a ruler. You can draw it with a pencil. If all of this is dry, then use a tool. Use a tool to get a straight line. And if not, then wing it and just go for it. I'm going to do this roughly in the middle. You can use a liner brush if you're more comfortable with that. I think I might do a liner brush just because I can see that these are pretty tiny trees, and with a liner brush I can always make it bigger. It's kind of really hard to go smaller. So how I'm going to do it is I'm going to hold my brush at the very tip so that with very little movement I can go all the way down in to one, like I can go all the way down in one motion. Okay. I don't have to move anything. I don't have to move my hand. So hold your brush at the end, and I'm also going to rest my brush. I'm going to rest my brush on, I'm going to rest my wrist on my wrist, like my two wrists on each other, so that I have stability even though my hand is far away from the canvas. So that can be helpful when you're doing this. I'm going to sit in the middle of this. And just in one stroke, I can go all the way up. And then now that I have this base, I can go a little bit closer. But even then you can see that this line, even though I was close, is not as straight as this one because I didn't have that distance. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. go all the way down to the bottom. All right, now if you're unfamiliar with how to use a filbert in order to get your fun little tree branches, use this space right here, which is going to be covered up by black anyways. Use this space right here to practice. So grab your brush, and what you're going to do is you're going to hold it a little bit at an angle, and you're going to dab it down. So once you press the canvas, you're going to dab it down. And if you have the right consistency of paint, you're going to end up with all these little bits and pieces. Here, I'll show you. See that? The little pieces. So this one goes all the way, I think, out there. It's kind of and just use that little technique, and I'm just dabbing my brush and creating that. You can also use other brushes if you're more comfortable with that. Like, that is completely fine. Use whatever brushes you want to use for this. But also the trick is in this stage is not to cover up all of the background. So you'll see I'm gonna leave some of this in here. You're just gonna move your way up. Make it over here. Once you get to the middle, you're gonna want to really start leaving some spaces in here. You can also go from the top down if you want to, if you're more familiar with that. I'll usually do like a rocking motion, so I'll go on the left side and then I'll rock onto the right side, just tapping, and then I'll go a little bit down, do it on the other side. Again, I'm just dabbing, dab, dab, dab. There's a lot of dabbing in this technique. And you just keep adding on until you get a tree that you like. So this is what it looks like up close. Just looks like there's nothing much to it. But far away, looks like a whole tree. Looks super cool. All right, then you can do a couple here on the side. There's one side here. I'm just gonna start at the top. You're gonna do the same thing for all the other trees that you want to add. And you can add more, you can add less. Completely up to you. So I have one more tree. Before I do that, I'm just going to add a light coat of black just to make sure that it is black and there's not really any lighter parts. Alright, and that is pretty much it for the trees. I'm going to go ahead and rinse this brush out, and we are almost done. Alright, so right now I'm just kind of exploring if I want to add kind of that orangey tone to the tree. Alright, so just with a small brush, I went ahead and got a watered down orange and just put it around some of the leaves, like the black parts. To brighten them up a little bit. And then I went back over those parts with just a tiny bit of black, just to reinstate that black. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and get out our green, because we're gonna have some fun with some green. I'm, 'cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause we're gonna have some fun with some green. 'Cause So I got my green out. I'm going to mix just a tiny bit of brown, and I'm also going to mix some yellow in it. Not in all of it. I want to keep some of this bright, but I do want some of it to be a little bit, I don't know, toned down a little bit, because the green that I have is very bright. All right, and then I'm going to take some of that and put in a little bit of this blue, so I can get a little bit of a darker hue. A little bit more. Okay, so then now I have a kind of like a darker green, a yellowish green, and let's go ahead. I might need more, so I'm gonna go ahead and mix a little bit more. All right, so I have a couple different greens. I think that's gonna work great. I'm going to grab a whatever this thing is called, a filbert. I'm gonna grab, or not a filbert, a fan brush. Starts with an F sound. Close enough. I'm gonna grab a fan brush, and I'm going to grab the darkest color first. Grab just the tiniest bit of water, not too much. And I'm going to start adding in just the areas. I'm going to add all the medium tones, like the medium tones. Make sure that you don't cover up all that black. So anywhere where you see a green color, you're going to put this. Focus on the light parts later. We're just focusing on green versus black. And if you think of hills, usually there's like a green spot and then below it there's a dark spot. So wherever you put a green spot, below that is going to be a dark spot. So you see that? I still have black in there. So I'm going to take a little bit of this green, mix it in with what's on. I'm going to take a little bit of the lighter green, sorry. Mix it in with what's on my brush, and I'm going to put in a little bit of the highlight green, just a little bit. Starting to add a little bit of dimension. I'm going to go in straight to my green highlight color, I'm just going to put it on the very tops of some of the green parts. Oop, now that was too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe it off. So anywhere where you have the highlight of green is going to be where the sun is hitting the grass. So it's not going to make sense to put it kind of in this area unless maybe it's like shining through. And I'm going to grab some yellow. And grab some yellow into the green that I have so that I can have some warmer yellow off to this side. And maybe even a little bit of brown to kind of tone it out a little bit. I'm picturing this over here, like the sunshine is getting to it a little bit, so it's warmer colors. All right, and lastly, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to grab, you can grab any brush. I have a toothbrush that I use for splattering. Somewhere, here it is. So in this area, we're going to do some flowers. In this area, they're going to be white. In the sun area, they're going to be yellow. So, because there's no sun on them, there's no warm colors. So I'm going to grab some, is this white? Okay, there's not a whole lot of white on my palette. So I'm going to grab some of this space. Way too much white. And then I'm also gonna grab, let's do yellow ochre. It's kind of a toned down version of it. And if you want to do this with just a normal, just, you know, put in your dot somewhere, you can do that too. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do that. So I'm actually going to grab the back of my smallest brush. I'm going to grab the handle, dip it in some water, and I'm going to get out my I'm gonna kind of mix it in my white. And yes, I did say the back of my handle. There's almost like a hint of blue in this. And I'm just gonna put little tiny dots. And these are gonna be little wildflowers. Anywhere you want, pretty much. And then with your yellow, you're going to do the same thing. Except they're going to be yellow. And you can dip the handle straight into water. And then mix it with your paint. The only potential problem with doing it yourself is sometimes we tend to be a little bit too uniform in where we put everything, and putting in a little bit of splatter helps to kind of pull that out. But all right, there we go. That is it. Thank you so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I love how the sky came out, and just how much of a contrast there is between the sky and the tree. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. It really does help me. As well as you'll get notified of when I go live, and our next classes, you here on YouTube will get a first look at our next classes, because I usually will post them. I have to make the events on YouTube before I can share them on Facebook. So if you're on YouTube, you can get a first look with that. If you painted tonight, please, I love to see your guys' work. So please go on to my Facebook. I will post a link right now. You can go on there and post a photo of what you did. I have a free community just for that. I'll go ahead and post that right now. Let's see. Okay, so this is my free Facebook group. It's for all artists, whether watercolor, acrylic, you name it. You can. It's mostly just for my classes. But yeah, feel free to share your work, whether or not you're painting this live with me or you're painting it a few years from now. Feel free to still share it. I mean, I still have people sharing like early classes, and it's still so fun to see. So please share it with me. I would love that. And yeah, we will definitely see you next week. We are painting, let's see, what are we painting next week? I believe we are painting a sheep with a flower crown. So if you enjoy painting animals or flowers, next week is for you. And then the week after that, we are starting a Bob Ross beginner acrylics series. So where we take a Bob Ross inspired painting and I reteach it for acrylics. I grew up wanting to paint with Bob Ross and couldn't because he did oil and I did acrylics and it just didn't work the same. So this series is going to be for all of you guys who are beginner painters and really wanted to paint with Bob Ross but feel like they couldn't because he taught it differently, obviously. So yeah, keep a lookout for that. That's in a couple weeks, and thanks so much for joining me. We will see you next week for our flower crown, our cute little sheep, and yeah, we'll see you then. Bye guys.